Hey, Baruch Halevi B here from Soul Centered and the Defiant Spirit. Thanks for tuning in. I want to share with you a little bit about what has dropped on the podcast and the YouTube channel the past few days and weeks. Um, so you can check those out over at defiantspirit.org, where you'll get both access to my podcast. You can go to defiantspirit.org podcast. I think it should be in the show notes, and it'll take you to the both podcasts. You can get it on Podbean and, of course, Apple iTunes. And then at the bottom, you can click over to YouTube if you'd rather watch the video versions. But I've been dropping a lot of content lately because I've been working with some really great people. One of them is Michael Feiner. Mike Feiner, shout out of Feiner Wealth Management. So make sure to check out my videos with my good friend Michael Feiner. We're doing all things finance, wealth, money management, investing through the lens of the Enneagram. And it's just amazing, amazing, amazing how insightful the Enneagram is around around anything and everything, and especially, well, as we've explored, money and wealth. There's not much out there on better ways to invest, better ways to understand your money. And what's amazing to me is Michael works with his clients, really seeing them in a much deeper way, I think, than most money managers would do, taking the time to learn the Enneagram, to utilize it in his own life, to utilize it with his clients, to better personalize the experience. Because at the end of the day, the Enneagram sometimes is thought of as depersonalizing, like another, oh God, another, personality test, another label, so that I can be reduced to another box. And it's the opposite. It allows me to address you on your terms, to know your fears, to know your triggers, and to avoid those, to help, be more aspirational, to lift you up towards your goals. Because the desires of an Enneagram 8 or an Enneagram 2 or an Enneagram 5 are going to be very fundamentally different. And Michael really is utilizing that in a very profound way. And so it's been amazing to see that play out in the realm of finance, also utilizing it in areas of business development and leadership, piloting it here in Denver with a few companies, and for them to be able to utilize it with their employees, with their clients, for business development, for leadership development. Just tremendous. So lots of good stuff there. But this week we've been focused on the Enneagram 8, and my podcast on the Enneagram 8 in general just came out. So if you don't know the 8, the Challenger, you can see behind me, the Enneagram 8, the Challenger, our Wealth 360 version of that is going to come out on Thursday. And so you'll learn about how an 8 is an investor. And then yesterday I did a special one. I should say I planned it. I didn't plan it. Maybe, the divine planned it, but I did it on Martin Luther King and him being an angry 8 and learning how to harness that anger for a greater good. And so it just happened to be the week that I was doing Enneagram 8s. But the bottom line is Martin Luther King is a great example of as I would call it, a responsive 8, right? The not the reaction. So there's really only two ways to be in the world, says Viktor Frankl. We're either reacting or we're responding. If we're reacting, we're in fear, we're unconscious, we're on autopilot. If we're responding, we're, as Frankl says, responsible, response-able, able to respond. Well, Martin Luther King grappled with the same stuff that all Enneagram 8s grapple with, and I'll tell you what that is. But he learned how to defy his 8ness, his number. That's why I call my system Defy Your Number. He learned how to defy his number, to not succumb to his base nature, to rise above it and to use it. We don't want to get rid of our nature. You don't want to, if you're Enneagram 8, that's how you react. That's your core type. That's your core pattern. You don't want to get rid of it. You can't get rid of it. You don't change the wiring. It's not going to happen. You're not going to become a 1. You're not going to become a 9. You have those in you. You have access to them. You can develop them. But in my experience, your core type is your core type. We are who we are. We're wired how we're wired. Call it whatever you want. But 8s react like 8s. 1s react like 1s. But what you can learn to do is defy your number, not live your life in reaction, and choose to respond. Now, again, just to show you a great range of Enneagram 8s, they go from the Enlightened 8, like a Martin Luther King, like a Winston Churchill, some really amazing eights all throughout history. I think Mother Teresa was probably an eight. I put her as a two in my system, but I'm rethinking that. I do think she was an eight because there was a piss and vinegar, an anger, and intensity to her that I think we like to forget posthumously and make her into this sort of gentle giant. I don't think she was gentle. Everything I've read about her, the people I've heard that have had interpersonal experiences, like if you didn't get on board, get out of the way. So that's an eight. Um, Way of being in the world. Now that can become very reactive, and you can get some angry eights that don't harness their anger, that don't become a Martin Luther King, and they just become, as my wife calls me from time to time, just another eight hole, right? Because eights can be eight holes. I mean, look, anybody can be an asshole, but eights have a natural inclination towards it. We probably do it better than most, maybe all of the other Enneagram types, because there is an anger that just burns beneath our surface. Why that is, you listen to the podcasts, listen to more of my stuff on Enneagram 8. I'm not going down that hole, but it just is. Trust me. And this is one of the ways I know when I'm dealing with an 8 because I can feel the fire. Now, a responsive 8, you can still feel it, but they've learned how to harness it. Now, we may not call it anger at that point. Now we'll just call it intensity. We'll call it, I don't know, life force. Eights just have more of that. They have access to it. And if they're not careful, if they're not conscious, if they're not responsive, it will consume them like a fire. Fire is a good analogy for an 8 because fire is not good or bad. It depends what we do with it. Depends how closely we monitor it. It's probably the most important contribution to human development, or one of them in human history, the ability to make fire and harness fire and all the things we have done as a species with fire. And I don't have to tell you, it can be one of the most destructive elements in our lives. So the same is true with that life force, that juice that an 8 feels. So it depends what she does with it. And that defines whether or not she becomes an enlightened 8 or just another 8 hole. And this is true with all the numbers. We all have the high side and the low side. We react, we respond. The choice is ours, the choice is yours. And so that's really what I explore in this week's podcast on Enneagram 8. And again, you can listen to this one. You can listen to the MLK from yesterday. You can listen to Thursday, 8 investors, and you can backtrack and learn 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because we've been just working through them over the past few weeks and months, I guess, at this point, to make sure you have all of the Enneagram type overview. Now, if you want more, I now have my own system, Defy Your Number Enneagram system. I have an assessment, a test, and you take the test to get you into your core number, your core type. You'll have access to all 9 types. You'll see how you rank order them. They're all in you. But these are the way that you go to them is how you rank order them in this test. I'll get you back an executive summary, an overview, and then I'll get you into my program. And that is an ebook, really deep dive into your type, videos, a workbook, and then access to my monthly gathering, which is starting next week, where we're going to be gathering all the types. Anybody who's taken a test with me, and I'm up to a few hundred now, will have access on a webinar monthly to have meaningful conversations on various topics. Next week, we're going to be talking about the power of why and the Enneagram, because I think one of the greatest things the Enneagram offers is not another label, is not another, describe to me what I am on paper. No, it talks about why I do what I do. And as Viktor Frankl says, if you know your why, you can endure your how. So we'll be having a webinar on the power of why, the Enneagram, and your why. Know your why to endure your how. So you get all of that now when you engage me in the Enneagram work. But at the very least, you can just get my new ebook, which is complimentary. 9 Enneagram types walk into a bar, and it gives you an overview of each 9 of the types. So it's not yet up on my website. It soon will be just a click and download thing. But until then, shoot me an email if you want the ebook at, sorry, I got the chills there, Baruch at defiantspirit.org. Until then, jump over to defiantspirit.org, check out the podcast, the videos, and I will see you in the next video. Defy your number, live your spirit.